Hi everyone. Today we're going to look at inventory management, how to control inventory, what we do with it, how to cost it. Because remember, inventory is just money in the bank, so we're going to be looking at that. As I said earlier, inventory is just money in the bank. It's a financial investment in food and in non-food items, and it represents all the goods that will be processed and sold at a profit. If the goods are wasted, if they're mismanaged, if they spoil, they go rotten, if they're stolen, your profit's going to shrink. And if profit shrinks too much, your business is just going to close down. So remember, it makes sense if you've spent all this money on inventory and you've got to store it properly. It has to go somewhere. If you do it in a nice organized fashion, um, it's easily found, it's easily retrieved, it's easily issued out to people that need it. The storage, remember, might just be for a couple of hours, it might be for months. Depends whether it's in the freezer or whether it's in the walk-in fridge or whether it's something that's really perishable. Um, but the period of time that you're going to store a product or the conditions that you store it in are really just governed by what the product actually is. All items that are on the menu are inventory. Perishable products are really hard to control and they should be stored centralized if possible. All the merchandise of the same type, all the eggs or whatever it might be, are all should be really stored in one location. But sometimes that's not quite feasible because more than one department might need eggs or milk or whatever it is. So sometimes it's not possible to store it all in one centralized place. Inventory management is not actually as easy as it sounds. Um, Basically, what it is keeping enough physical inventory or enough goods on hand to meet the customer needs. You want to have stuff to sell. You don't want to run out. And remember, the whole idea is to only spend the amount of money that you need to. You don't want to go spending too much money and then you've got thousands of dollars in inventory that you don't actually need. Inventory management also involves controlling the inventory. So making sure that you don't sell out of stuff, make sure that things are stored properly in the proper locations. Inventory management usually starts, or well, it does start actually, with the taking of a physical inventory. That's counting every single thing that you have in every part of your establishment. Usually done at the close of an accounting period, can be different amounts of time. It might be 1 week, it might be 1 month. Usually it's about a month, to be quite honest. Always used to do inventory on the very last day of the month from midnight till 6 o'clock in the morning. Taking inventory is the actual hands-on count of every single item that's stored in the operation. It's got to be really accurate, so you've got to have a really good established procedure for doing that. Um, what we're actually trying to do is get a dollar amount or a dollar value of the actual inventory that we're carrying, so that we can actually calculate the food cost accurately for the accounting period, which in this case would probably be a month. So we're going to be looking at two different types of inventory systems. The most common one is periodic inventory system. It's the one that most hotels and restaurants use, and it's the one that we will be working with for our assignments. Basically, how it worked out is you take the cost of your opening inventory, plus any purchases that you've made, plus and minus adjustments. It depends on what they are. We'll talk about that later. Minus your closing inventory, and that gives you your cost of sales. And to work out your food cost percent, you take the cost of sales and you divide that by food sales, multiply by 100. That will give you your food cost percent. We will be looking at that in detail in a moment. Other type of inventory system is a perpetual inventory system. You've probably seen this in stores where they go along with a little scanner. Basically, it keeps the manager informed of exactly how much inventory is in at any given time. It's a continuous way of tracking inventory. Um, a perpetual inventory chart tells how much product is in hand at any given time. So if you're in Loblaws, for instance, I know exactly how many cans of soup are on the shelf or whatever it might be. It's limited to operations that have the software to do that, and they use scanning devices with a universal product code, which is a kind of a squiggly line that you see in quite a lot of products. As I said before, perpetual inventory system, it's got two purposes really. It ensures that there's enough inventory is available at all time, whether it's on a menu item or not. Most hotels and restaurants don't use this system. And it also allows the manager, if it's in a store particularly, to know exactly the status, how many cans of soup are on the shelf, like I said, and the value of each one, and exactly how much they've got in inventory at any one time, how much money it's worth. So when should you take an actual physical inventory? Lots of operations do this when the place is closed. Um, if the inventory is taken during operations, there's a lot of things happen. You know, you've got things coming in and out. You've got people using stuff. Um, there's delivery. You can't accept deliveries at that time. We kind of talked about this in class a couple of weeks ago. I used to get round this by we used to do inventory at midnight. So it would start at midnight. Myself and the accountant would go in. There would be nobody in the hotel apart from night staff, and we'd be able to go to all the different parts of the hotel that were food that where food products were, whether it was tea bags for the rooms or whatever it might be, and we were able to inventory everything really accurately without being interrupted, without any of the guys taking stuff in order to cook it because an order had come in, and that sort of stuff. Common sense, really. In order to take inventory really efficiently, you've got to be organized, you've got to be smart, you've got to have things stored properly, organized. We used to have all of the things on our shelves so that we would walk into or we would go into the walk-in freezer or the walk-in fridge. We knew what was in shelf number one and then on shelf number two, and we had our inventory list set up like that so that we just worked our way through shelves in an organized way. Every area should be categorized. Every storage area should be organized. Remember, you've got to rotate stock first in, first out. That's really important. Two people should take the inventory. One counts and and calls out the quantity, and the other person writes it down. Um, you sometimes see a UPC reader being used for this, but that's really only in Loblaws. We don't really do that in hotels. So this is a typical example of an inventory sheet. You'll see there's a few things on top: item description first of all, then unit, then quantity, then price, and then extension. I'm sure you've probably seen this in menu planning when you're doing the little quizzes in menu planning there. Anyway, if you look at this one as an example, the item description is apple juice in this case. The unit size is 24 by 355 milliliter containers. The quantity is 3. The price of each is 11.05, 11.05. And if you multiply 3 times 11.05, you get the extension price, which is 33.15. We'll look at each one of these in detail in the next few slides. So as we've just seen, the inventory sheet shows you basically how to categorize all the products that you've got in your inventory. If you look at the first column, it's item description. It's already highlighted: apple juice, grape juice, tomato juice, pineapple juice, tomato juice again. You'll see that tomato juice is in there twice. The reason for that is that there are two different sizes. If you look at the first tomato juice there, which is number 3, it's 12 by 1.39 litres. And if you look at the second one, it's 24 by 355 milliliters. So the different sizes and different prices. Now it also says here that you can alphabetize your inventory. I never really like doing that. Particularly when you're taking inventory, it's a real pain in the butt because you have to go, if you're looking for apple juice, you have to search through A. If you're looking for zebras next, you have to go away to Z. If the next thing is eggs, you have to go to E. And I found it really slow, so we didn't do that. We sorted all that out at the end after we'd taken the actual physical inventory. It's a good idea to leave lines in between when you're taking your inventory so that you can write down any price changes or something, any unit size differences or any little notes that you need to do. But anyway, first of all, the first column is item description. So the second column is the unit column, and that basically lists the individual size of each item. There can be various things. There can be kilos, there can be cans, there can be liters, there can be pounds, there can be grams, really any unit of measurement. You'll see the highlighted column there. Apple juice, in this case, 24 by 355 milliliter cans or cartons. So the quantity column lists the physical count or the actual count of each item. You have to be careful that the unit size and the quantity, they can be confused sometimes. For example, if flour is listed on your sheet, your inventory sheet that is listed in kilos instead of bags, the person who's counting might say 4, meaning 4 10-kilo bags of flour, and instead of 40 kilos of flour being recorded, only 4 kilos get recorded. So therefore your inventory is 36 kilos short and your food cost isn't going to be very good for that month. So in the price column, this is the individual price for each unit. The way that you calculate the price per unit is obviously the item price of how you purchased it. If it's a 10-kilo bag or a 5-kilo bag or whatever. So an example is a 10-kilo bag costs $12.90. That would be the unit price. It could be listed as kilos of flour, so you could divide it down and list just kilos of flour. Although it's probably better to keep it in the biggest units that you can. So in this case, it would be 10-kilo bags. Don't break it down if it's not necessary. So the extension column is basically the unit price multiplied by the quantity. So if you take apple juice as an example there's 3 cases of apple juice. Each case is 11.05, and if you multiply one by the other, you get 33.15, which is the extended price. At the end of your inventory, you would add up all the extended prices, and that's going to give you the total dollar value of your inventory. So once you've totaled all of these up, it tells you exactly how much you have in your food inventory. And we're going to use that to calculate the food cost and to calculate the food cost percentage. Next thing we're going to do is calculate the cost of goods sold. The cost of goods sold is what it cost you in a month to make all the food that you actually sold. So what you had to buy and what it cost you to buy that to be able to sell all the dishes on your menu. This is actually an exercise we're going to do as an assignment for next week. There is an interactive document posted online that's going to help you to work this out. But basically what we're going to take is our opening inventory. And our opening inventory, by the way, is taken from the closing inventory of the previous month. So for instance, if I was doing the inventory for March, the closing inventory for February will be what my opening inventory, that's the number or the figure that I would use for my opening inventory in March. I have to add in any purchases, that's any things that I actually bought from Cisco or whoever. I have to minus out any transfers from different departments, so lemons and things that went to the bar or whatever. And then what I'm going to do is minus, once I've totaled all of that up, I'm going to minus my total closing inventory amount, and that will give me the cost of goods sold. We'll go over that in detail in the interactive document. We're going to look at inventory adjustments. Now this is in the interactive document as well that's posted online. But when I do my inventory, I have to add in certain costs. So transfers from the bar, so bottles of wine perhaps that I use for cooking that came from the bar, I have to add the cost of that onto my inventory. And maybe other things that I've got from other units, from other areas of the hotel, they have to be added in. And I have to subtract certain things like things that I transferred to the bar, the cost of lemons and limes and cucumbers and things like that that have gone to the bar to make drinks. I have to make sure that they're taken from my inventory because basically I'm charging the bar for those. And you see employee meals, I should get a credit for them, so they should be subtracted from my total inventory. Again, we will be able to look at that when we see the interactive document and we do the assignment for next week. And just another note on par stock. We talked about this in class the other week, but par stock is the amount that you need to make or to meet the normal demands. For instance, we talked about cans of beans. If you need 5 cans of beans for the whole month or for the whole week, you would have a par stock of a minimum of 5. You would probably put an extra one in, so it would be 6. So you would always have 6 cans of beans in stock because you know that that's how many you need between orders, if you like. So for instance, if I went in to do my ordering and I looked on the shelf and there's only 4 cans of beans left, I know that I have to order 2 in order to keep up with my par stock. We did talk on this before, so I'm pretty sure that you understand this fairly well. Security of merchandise. We talked about this briefly in class the other week there. Remember, inventory is money in the bank. And if you're wasting that inventory, it's been thrown away, or people are stealing it, they're stealing from you, they're stealing money from your bank. And people, as a rule, don't steal low dollar items or cheap items, if you like. They're going to aim for the high cost items. About 10% of your inventory usually has a pretty high dollar value. So you really should limit access to storage areas, lock places at night time when you're going home, that sort of thing. And give a bit of priority to high value foods, things like caviar and stuff. In all honesty, most of these type of things are usually kept in a little fridge in the chef's office. And you have to ask for them as you use them. Things like saffron, perhaps, or really expensive caviar, etc. So just another little note in the security of merchandise. Um, just make sure, because this is money in the bank, your inventory is money in the bank, you don't want it stolen because they're just basically stealing from your bank. Use adequate locks. Maintain the control of the keys. Make sure that you know where the keys are or somebody has the keys at all times. Maybe limit access to storage room, or there's only certain people around, and maybe just you and your sous chef or whatever it may be. And that's really it. It's common sense again. Remember, however, it's not really just people that will steal stuff. Um, if there's some silent thieves around there, basically the spoilage of food, right? And unsanitary conditions, really dirty places because you can't use them. The principal causes of spoilage are the usual things: storage temperatures, improper rotation of stock, not first in, first out, being stored too long, places being dirty, mouse droppings, all of that sort of stuff, inadequate ventilation, or improper storage facilities. And a lot of places, small places particularly, do have problems with storage facilities. You have to store in a tiny little area, and that can be a challenge. So you have to make sure that you control things so that you don't have spoilage. A little bit more on preventing spoilage. There's a few things, just common stuff. Segregate or separate things with strong odors from each other. So, eggs that absorb really strong odors like garlic or whatever it might be. Make sure that you keep them apart. Make sure that you're checking perishables so that the spring mix isn't gone bad and it's all mushy in the bag. Just basically handling fish and meat and things like that wrongly. Sometimes when things are being delivered and they're lying around outside of the fridge or whatever for a long time, they're already beginning to spoil by the time you go to put them into storage. It's just basically looking after the things that we know, proper temperatures being maintained, all the perishables, spring mix, etc., being checked daily, storage space nice and clean and dry. And everything is issued before it goes bad, basically. Common sense again. I've seen every single one of these being done and costing money. So try and avoid them at all costs. Inventory turnover. You should really control the size of your inventory. It depends, of course, whether you're using a lot of perishables. For instance, if you were going to the market every day to buy things just for your menu for that night, and then at the end of the night have nothing left, you would have a very small inventory. But when you're not working like that, when you have a lot of frozen goods and things like that, you obviously need to have a bigger inventory. You have to control that. It should really be aimed to the amount of usage. That really depends on, that really determines how much or how big your inventory is. But as a rule, inventories, remember, are money in the bank. So they should be controlled to the minimum amount. You shouldn't have thousands and thousands of dollars tied up in inventory because it means that you can't pay your staff, do other things, pay your rent or whatever, because all of your money is tied up in inventory. So keep it to a minimum. So just a summary on inventory management. Inventory management is basically the process of keeping enough inventory on hand so that you can feed your customers and not run out of items on the menu. And doing that without spending any more than is necessary. Because remember, inventory is money in the bank. Remember, if your inventory is counted or calculated wrongly, that can make a big impact on your food cost. If there's mistakes when it's been written down, recorded inaccurately, cost prices, you're using the wrong price to cost your inventory. It's changed in the last month or whatever. Theft, things being stolen, so you haven't got any money for them. Product spoilage, the same thing. All of these things, if your inventory is counted and calculated inaccurately, all of these things will affect your food cost. And just to finish off, inventory turnover rate is basically the number of times that an inventory is turned over completely or completely used, if you like, during an accounting period. That's the end of the presentation on inventory management.